Alright guys, in this video I'm going to be reading the first book of Hermes Trismegistus and adding my commentary and thoughts as I go through. As you notice, I'm on the screen for this one. I know YouTube doesn't really like faceless videos, and I feel like this one's important, so I decided to just do this to see if I can at least get a little bit more traction, because I feel like this video is going to be more important than some of the other ones I made. The other ones I made so far mostly like little rants and stuff. It's not anything super important, whereas this one I feel like is more important. So let's get started. O my son, write this first book both for humanity's sake and for piety towards God. For there can be no religion more true or just than to know the things that are, and to acknowledge thanks for all things to him that made them, which thing I shall not cease continuing to do. What then should a man do, O Father, to lead his life well, seeing there is nothing here true? Be pious and religious, O my son, for he that for he that doth so is the best and highest philosopher, and without philosophy it is impossible to ever attain to the height and exactness of piety and religion. But he that shall learn and study the things that are, and how they are ordered and governed, and by whom, and for what cause, and to what end, will acknowledge thanks to the workman, as to a good father, an excellent nurse, and a faithful steward. And he that gives thanks shall be pious and religious, and he that is religious shall know both where the truth is and what it is, and learning that, he will be yet made more he will yet more and more religious. What? He will be yet more and more religious. Sorry. Kind of like, I should have blown up the text a little bit. I'm gonna squinting a little here, not gonna lie. So the first couple verses, basically, my interpretation is that it's important to focus on trying to understand the world and how everything works, and in the process you grow an appreciation for, as you understand, kind of like when certain scientists get obsessed with trying to figure something out, and it just consumes them, sometimes in a negative way, but it can also be positive, and they appreciate the simplicity and complexity at the same time of what they're figuring out in the process. Moving along, for never, O my son, shall or can that soul which while in the body lightens and lifts up itself to know and comprehend that which is good and true, slide back to the contrary, for it is infinitely enamored thereof, and forgotteth all evils, and when it hath learned and known its father and progenitor, it can no more apostatize or depart from that good. And let this, O son, be the end of religion and piety, whereunto thou art once arrived. Thou shalt both live well and die blessedly, whilst thy soul is not ignorant whether it must return and fly back again. I feel like this is pretty important. So my first initiation into being more spiritual was Hermetic text. It was the Vision of the Divine Pymander by Hermes, which I read in The Secret Teachings of All Ages in my early 20s, and I started meditating, and I had some experiences. But before then, nothing really grabbed my attention. I was never into Christianity or any of the other Abrahamic religions or anything else. I did like some of the stuff I heard from like Taoism and Buddhism, but nothing, just little quotes and things. I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me, kind of thing. So this is what really started to grab my attention when I read it. I felt like there was just like something there that was just like, there's this is important, what I'm reading right now. So I ended up reading this later, because I don't remember if that was in that book or not, but I do remember reading it later, at least. So Which line was I on? Da, 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 da. Oh, yes. So more recently, I'm into more of the prison planet stuff, and in the process, you start to see things that weren't there, and this could just be validating my own beliefs. But this line was interesting. Line 7. Whilst thy soul is not ignorant whither it must return and fly back again, which says to me, you're not basically, if you keep down this path, when you die, you're not concerned with whether you need to reincarnate or not, because you already know. Like, if I don't, you shouldn't want to reincarnate. If you do, good luck with that. But I think in the process you're gonna not want to have to do that. So to me, this is saying, you're not ignorant of, like, oh, I'm dead and I have these regrets, or there's this karma and whatever. It's just like, oh no, I'm done. I'm out of here. I already know. For this only, O son, is the way to truth, which our progenitors travelled in, and by which making their journey they at length attained to the good. It is a venerable way and plain, but hard and difficult for the soul to go in that is in the body, which makes sense. In the body, there's all kinds of noise and distractions and things to get your attention. It is really, really difficult to work on this inner work and try to self-actualize. There's just so much. It's like, oh, I'm hungry, oh, I gotta pee, oh, I don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and like I'm lonely, or oh, I don't have enough friends, or oh, I don't make enough money, or there's always all this noise that just pulls you away and drags you back in. It is difficult, especially now. There's so much more distractions. I think the issue back then would be more so just not having the information. Now we have the information, but there's also a lot of information. There's a lot going on. There's a lot that can distract you. So we all have our, trouble, regardless of what time period you're incarnated into. For first must it war against its own self, and after much strife and dissension, it it must be overcome of the part, for the contention is of one against two, whilst it flies away, and they strive to hold and detain it. So the one against two is interesting. So the one obviously would be the mind, and the two could be the spirit and ego. It could be. I guess it doesn't matter. It's just basically those lesser forces, and just kind of like what I was talking about. All these the body and everything that comes with it is trying to distract you and pull you down. In other words, hold and detain. And you have this inner war going on where you're just trying to figure things out and find the truth, and it's a long, tough process. But the victory of both is not like, for the one haseth to that which is good, but the other is a neighbor of things that are evil, and that which is good desireth to be set at liberty, but the things that are evil love bondage and slavery. This is repeated over and over again, and it actually has a definition for good and evil specifically, but good is literally just expressed as freedom, and evil is bondage, if you could sum it up just like that. So you want to keep that in the back of your mind as you're going through when it talks about good and evil, which is interesting to me because when I was younger, I was very like freedom focused even as a child, and I think it's because I grew up without much parental oversight, so I got used to just being on my own and doing things on my own, and I hated the idea of someone trying to tell me what to do. Like, it just always bothered me, which led to me getting into it with the government when I was older. but that's how it be. and and so that was just like inherent within me. And then when I got older, like early 20s, I was more into like libertarianism and the Constitution and stuff, and trying to like get back to more grassroots liberty uh, structure for the United States, as opposed to now it just over time it just more and more laws, more and more control, more just gunk. Um, and then evil loves bondage and slavery, which is why all of these psychopathic rulers we have now, they're just everything is about control and just trying to tie everyone down for their own gain. Well, not, and sometimes not even for their own gain. It's maybe for the love of the game. They just, I don't know, it's weird. They just, in their brain, they have to like, I got to be on top, and I got to control everyone, and I got to control everything. It's very bizarre to me. Like, I don't even understand it, but that's pretty much how they are. And if the two parts be overcome, they become quiet, and are content to accept of it as their ruler. But if the one be overcome of the two, it is by them led and carried to be punished by its being in continuance here. So basically, as you become more conscious and you start to gain control over the lesser forces within you, you're starting to call the shots. That's just what it is. And it's one of those things you have to do forever. Like, it's not like you win. It's a war. So you're just winning one battle at a time. There's not a point where it's just like, oh, it's done. Like when the Buddhists talk about enlightenment, it's a temporary state. You have to keep practicing to stay, relatively near there. If you That's why they fuck off to the middle of nowhere, because if you try to do that, in a city, it's much more difficult. There's all these distractions, and it's something you have to work on all the time. It's easier when you're just by yourself in a cave and just eating, farming, and doing exercise, and that's it. Much more easy. Um, da, da, da. This is, O son, the guide in the way that leads thither. For thou must first forsake the body before thy end, and get victory in the contention and strifeful life. And when thou hast overcome, return. So forsaking the body is really big in Hermeticism. It's basically you don't want to be attached and identify with the body, and just identify that it's just a meat suit. It's not you. It's just a vehicle you're driving. It's like a car. You're just driving in temporarily, and one day you might be in a different car. Preferably, I rather not, but and at the end here, it's comma return. I don't think that's return like reincarnate. I think that's return like go back out of here, where you came from. But now, O my son, I will buy heads through the things that are. Understand thou what I say, and remember what thou hearest. This is when it's going to go into a lot of short little phrases. Some of them are they sound like contradictory, but it just a lack of understanding. There's some stuff in here I'm not even sure of. I'm not an expert, but I've read it so many times. But I will try my best, and that's all we could do. All things that are moved, only that which is not is immovable. Every body is changeable, not every body is dissolvable. Some bodies are dissolvable. So, all things that are moved, only that which is not is immovable. I think this is reference to kind of the material that underneath the material world that isn't actually moving. In other words, the universe is mental and mind, and it's not actually like it's like a dream. It's not actually like things are actually moving. It's just like I guess like a space where things are happening. So it's kind of like an underlying material or fabric that reality just kind of exists in, reality as we know it. Uh, Everybody is changeable. Not everybody is dissolvable. Some bodies are dissolvable. Um, so everybody is changeable, but not everybody is dissolvable. So changing and dissolving are two different things. Something could change form or shape, but not dissolving is more specifically kind of falling apart. So I think it's a reference to kind of spirit body versus your like regular meat suit body. Which your meat suit body is dissolvable, but your spirit is probably changeable, probably based off your mental state, if I had to guess. Um, every living being is not mortal, nor every living thing immortal. So basically, your spirit is life in a sense too, um, but it's not mortal, whereas your physical body is mortal. That which may be dissolved is also corruptible. That which abides always is unchangeable. That which is unchangeable is eternal. That which is made is always corrupted. So basically, it's just saying, like, anything in the material world is corruptible and dissolvable, whereas the things outside of that are not. They're not dissolvable and they're not corruptible. It mentions this again later, basically. That which is made but once is never corrupted, neither becomes any other thing. So again, this reference to the spirit. It's made, it doesn't become something else. So it's just like your soul's in the body, it doesn't become the body. They're just two separate things. Make sure I don't lose my spot here. Oops. Firstly, God. Secondly, the world. Thirdly, man. The world for man, man for God. In this context, I don't think it means world as in like Earth. I think it just means like the material world. But there is a spot where later where it uses the world where I think is referencing Earth, which is weird. It could just also be a mistranslation because I don't. This wasn't written in English. Of the soul, that part which is sensible is mortal, but that part which is reasonable is immortal. Every essence is immortal. Every essence is unchangeable. Everything that is double. None of the things that are stand still. So the last line obviously talking about how the material world, nothing's at rest, everything moves, which somehow people knew long before we ever were able to observe that. What else of the soul that sensible? So the reason comes from the mind. So sometimes our reason tells us that something doesn't make sense in the material world, or like something with like a law or something like that. Like that doesn't sound reasonable to me, but it might sound what's the other word used? Pretty much practical, or like it makes sense, but it goes against my reason. Like I don't really like it, but I see where it's coming from. The reason is like more of like a higher mind activity, which may not fit situations in the material world. Not all things are moved by a soul, but everything that is moved by a soul. That's a tough one. So, not all things are moved by a soul, but everything that is moved by a soul. So, I think this is saying that everything that is kind of fits within, you could say God, or like a greater soul. So, in essence, it is moved by a soul, but then on the more on a more microscope, like we like drill down, everything isn't moved by a soul, because we have things that move in reality that aren't moved by like an actual soul, like a rock falling or something like that, versus I throw a rock. Once in one sense, or in one case, the rock moves maybe because there was like an earthquake or something happened. In the other sense, I'm physically causing the rock to move. But then in the greater scheme of things, everything is moved by a soul, essentially. I think that's what it's saying. It's kind of weird that the way it's written. I could be wrong, of course. I could be wrong about everything, but that's my interpretation. Everything that suffers is sensible. Everything that is sensible suffereth. Everything that is sad rejoiceth also, and is a mortal living creature. Not everything that is joyous is also sad, but is the eternal living thing. The last part is pretty interesting. So we like to think this idea of, if you can feel joy and pleasure, you can also feel pain and sadness. But this is saying you could feel joy without feeling sadness. And when I think back to when I had the like Kundalini activation experience, and I kind of felt this intense unconditional love and bliss and wellness and stuff, that state, there is no sadness. It is just joy. So that makes sense to me. But if you haven't had that experience, it probably doesn't make sense, because you're like, oh, well, you can't have one without the other. But in you can't normally, but in some cases you can, just because of this reality, the way it's set up. You can't really do that, but you can in a greater sense. I'm butchering that, but hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down. Let's see. Not everything. Not everybody is sick. Everybody that is sick is dissolvable. The mind in God, reasoning or discoursing in man, reason in the mind. The mind is void of suffering. So when we talk about the mind and reason and stuff, it's completely separate from the body, so it can't suffer. So all the suffering that we experience doesn't come from the mind and reason. It comes from the body and the sensibilities of the body. That's basically all that's saying. No thing in a body true. All that is incorporeal is void of lying. Everything that is made is corruptible. Nothing good upon earth, nothing evil in heaven. So when it says nothing good upon earth, nothing evil in heaven, it's saying we got to go back to the definition of good and evil it had. So heaven is liberty and freedom. Evil is restriction and control. So there's no like on earth there's all these restrictions. Even if you were rich and whatever, and you could do whatever you want, you still have these restrictions kind of holding you in place. Even things you wouldn't think about, like maybe you can't just like go to Antarctica, right? You can't just, oh, I'm there. Like, you have to try to plan a trip. I don't think they let you actually visit there, even if you wanted to. Like, there's all these things that prevent you from doing it. You can't just do it. Like right now, let's say I want to go to the beach. It's a whole process. I have to physically, go there, drive there, plane ride there, whatever. Like, there's these restrictions you don't really think about, that prevent you from just being able to do what you want, essentially. Everything that is made is corruptible. So basically, everything in the material world is corruptible. All that is incorporeal is void of lying. Incorporeal is just stuff that's not part of the physical world. So in other words, it's saying the same thing when it talks about heaven. Heaven would just be basically outside of this material world. God is good, man is evil. Again, God doesn't have restrictions. It does what it wants. Man in the body has a lot of restrictions. Good is voluntary or of its own accord. Evil is involuntary against his will, which is basically all the stuff I just said. The gods choose good things as good things. Time is a divine being. Law is humane. Malice is the nourishment of the world. Malice is the nourishment of the world is interesting because if you look at the history of the world, when it involves man, it's full of malice. There's so many wars and all throughout history. I mean, you don't even have to look. You could look at any point in history. There's always these wars and a lot of death and suffering and stuff. It's like it's, the nourishment of the world. There wasn't, as far as what we know in recorded history, like a time of just like, oh, peacefulness. Nothing was going on. Everything was super chill. There's, even if there wasn't war, there was famines and natural disasters. There's just always a lot going on that isn't good. Time is a corruption of man. The more time you spend on the planet, on Earth, the greater your chances of you becoming corrupted just by nature of you being here. Makes sense to me. Whatsoever is in heaven is unalterable. All upon earth is alterable. So basically, the things being altered is something that has to do with material reality. It's not something that exists in heaven. It's just here. And when I say heaven, we're not talking about a floating city in the sky with the pearly gates and all that stuff. We're talking about basically existing outside of this material world, which I call a prison planet that we live in. And what's funny is when we talk about prison planet theory, it has to do with these archons feeding off of our negative emotions. And here in this Hermetic text has nothing to do with that theory whatsoever. Malice is the nourishment of the world. Interesting. I'm just going to say that. That's interesting. Let's see. Let me scroll down a little bit more. Nothing in heaven is servanted. Nothing upon earth is free. Basically saying the same thing again. Nothing unknown in heaven, nothing known upon earth. This is an interesting one because if you think about it, we can never really know anything on earth. Every time we do all this science and research and stuff, and we think we have things figured out, but then 10 years later there's a new discovery that overrides that, or the universe does something unexplainable, like the double slit experiment, where light particles go from a wave to a particle based off of whether it's being observed or not. That's a weird thing. It's like the more deep we dig, the more we find out that we don't actually know anything. Whereas in heaven, there's nothing you don't know. Which, when I had that Kundalini experience, I felt as if I knew and I was connected to everything. There wasn't anything outside of where I was. It was just everything was just there. So there was nothing else. There was no like wants or needs or what is this, what is that. It just, everything was just there. Whereas on Earth, it's, man, think about how much when you're trying to research something, like how many hours you spend just trying to like learn one little thing, and there's all this contradictory information, there's misinformation, there's all this stuff, and it makes it so difficult to just know anything. The things upon earth communicate not with those in heaven. All things in heaven are unblameable. All things upon earth are subject to reprehension. I think when I use the word reprehension, I think it's talking about, it may be referring to karma, but not 100% on that. That which is immortal is not mortal. That which is mortal is not immortal. That which is sowed is not always begotten, but that which is begotten is always sown. So when it talks about sown and begotten, it's talking about cause and effect. And it's saying that every cause has an effect, but not every effect has a cause. Which is really a mindfuck. I kind of think I understand it, but there's it not fully. It's one of those you sit there like, hmm. Of a dissolvable body, there are two times: one for sowing to generation, one from generation to death. Of an everlasting body, the time is only from the generation. Dissolvable bodies are increased and diminished. I think this is kind of referencing like kind of like working towards like truth versus not doing that, and in the process you're funding or you're fueling generation, but um, you're in a dissolvable body, but you're kind of helping move things in that direction. Whereas if you don't do that, you're just moving generation towards death. Or in other words, the people that come after you. That's my interpretation. Um, Dissolvable matter is altered into contraries, to wit, corruption and generation, but eternal matter into itself and its like. The generation of man is corruption. The corruption of man is the beginning of generation. So this is interesting. I feel like it's kind of saying that the corruption of this material world we live in inevitably ends up fueling generation. Basically, when as things get are like so bad, you can't help but notice that, and in the process, it kind of helps lead you to the truth. So, in other words, like you start to see the light in this like black void, and you start moving towards it because there's just so much negativity around you, and then you see that little bit of light, and you start to pursue it. Um, Whereas if you're in a more lit state, it would make it harder to see a light. So if it's nighttime and you see this light in the distance, you can see it and you follow it, you focus on it. But if it's the daytime, you might not be able to even see it, or harder to see. Um, that which offsprings or begetteth another is itself an offspring or begotten by another. Of the things that are, some are in bodies, some in their ideas. Whatsoever things belong to operation or working are in the body. That which is immortal partakes not of that which is mortal. So when it talks about the operations and stuff, it's usually referring to fate and destiny, which are tied to the body. It brings this up again later in more detail. Um, that which is immortal partakes not of that which is mortal. I think that's just like a reminder that you're in the body, not of the body. So you're technically not partaking in mortality. It's just like you're pretending like you are. That which is mortal cometh into a body immortal. Cometh not into a body immortal, but that which is immortal cometh into a body that was which is mortal, which is basically what I just said. Operation or workings are not carried upwards, but descend downwards. Things upon earth do not advantage those in heaven, but all things in heaven do profit and advantage all things upon earth. Heaven is capable and a fit receptacle of everlasting bodies. The earth is corruptible bodies. So when you're talking about the operation workings, again, think of like fate and destiny, and that's again more tied to this lower material world. It's not something that affects you in heaven. So outside of the body, this whole idea of like karma and reaping what you sow and stuff doesn't really exist. It's more of like a lower earth kind of thing, or lower material world kind of thing. Um, the earth is brutish, the heaven is reasonable or rational. Those things that are in heaven are subject or placed under it, but the things on earth are placed upon it. So the things that are in heaven are subject or placed under it, but the things on earth are placed upon it. I don't know about that one. Tell me what you think in the comments. Almost done. Heaven is the first element. Providence is divine order. Necessity is the minister or servant of providence. Fortune is the carriage or effect that which is without order, the idol of operation, a lying fantasy or opinion. So, fortune is carried effect, idol operation, lying fantasy. So this is talking about how, in my opinion, when we think of someone having good or bad luck and being obsessed with that as like, oh, it's just my luck and there's nothing I could do about it. It's out of my hands. It's this, I'm a victim of fate and destiny, basically, which is just like a false, another type of false idol. So you're just, oh, it's out of my hands. It's just, I can't control my luck, kind of thing. What is God? The immutable, unalterable good. What is man? An unchangeable evil. Again, think back to those definitions of good and evil. This definition of God as the immutable, unalterable good is funny to me because it's a good definition. It sounds silly, but I don't even know how else you would try to explain that. If thou perfectly remember these heads, thou castest not forget those things which in more words I have largely expounded unto thee, for these are the contents of or abridgment of them. Avoid all conversation with a multitude of common people, for I would not have thee subjected to envy, much less to be ridiculous unto the many. Which is funny because there's another Hermetic text that says you should try to talk to the multitude of the masses, but I think they're both right. It's just here it's trying to say like, they could be crabs in a bucket and drag you down. So I think it's all about balance. Like you want to, try to bring stuff like this up with people, and if they resonate with it, cool. If not, that's also cool. But you don't want to hang around people that it doesn't resonate with too much because then they're just kind of pull you in. So if you're friends with somebody and maybe you play games with, you go out drinking with, stuff like that, if you're hanging out with them all the time, you're not focused on your inner work because you're going to be distracted by, them and on all the things you're doing together. For the like always takes to itself that which is like, but the unlike never agrees with the unlike. Such discourses as they have very few auditors, and peradventure very few will have, but they have something peculiar unto themselves. So the like takes onto itself, which is like is interesting because they always say opposite attracts, which is true in some case. But I have noticed that when it comes to my personal relationships, I don't really have many close friends, and the ones I do are interested in things like this and can have conversations about stuff like this. And most people actually, especially when I first meet them, I always seem to rub them the wrong way. I think it's also because I'm an INTJ, and for whatever reason, I just project this energy that makes people feel insecure. I have no idea why. I'm not like intimidating. I'm not like I'm a very like chill, happy-go-lucky guy. So I don't know what that's about, but that's how it be. um, which really sucks too with dating because I've never met a girl that was ever into any of this kind of stuff. Like I've tried to break it up, and then it was just like but the unlike never agrees with the unlike, and I've gotten into it with people where um, when I talk about like stuff the government's doing I don't like, and they just kind of don't want to hear it, like in a group setting. This was like early 20s. Like I had a friend who's just more super normie, and I had another friend that was more kind of like me, so we'd bring this stuff up when we're in a group setting, and he would just get so pissed, like he doesn't want to hear it. And we're not friends anymore. Like no malice towards him or anything. Just I moved, and we never really kept in contact. But it's funny because he's like, I don't want to hear that stuff. Um, they do rather sharpen and whet evil men to their maliciousness. Therefore, it behoveth to avoid the multitude, and to take heed of them, as not understanding the virtue and power of the things that are said. Basically, what I said earlier, just try to limit your spending time with people that aren't really focused on understanding the world or having these deep conversations. You can still be friends and hang out with them, just not too much. Everything's about balance. How does thou mean, O Father? This, O Son, the whole nature and composition of those things called men is very prone to maliciousness, and is very familiar, and it is as it were nourished with it, and therefore it is delighted with it. Now this writ, if I shall come to learn or know that the world was once made, and all the things are done according to providence or necessity, destiny or fate, bearing rule over all, will he not be much worse than himself, despising the whole because it was made? And if he may lay the cause of evil upon fate or destiny, he will never abstain from any evil work. Wherefore we must look warily to such kind of people, that being in ignorance they may be less evil for fear of that which is hidden and kept secret. So this is saying, like, when people are ignorant of how things work, it is very easy for them to get pulled down by nature of the environment, and it's like it says, it's familiar, it's easy, it's like as if they're nourished. Like, have you ever seen those people that have like a downward spiral, and they seem kind of like they're kind of getting off on being a victim, and like, oh, woe is me, like I can't do anything, and it's like it consumes them, and then you start to see like almost like the light leave their eyes, and it's very jarring. I don't know if you ever experienced that with someone in your personal life, like a friend or family member, where they're just like obsessed with this idea that they're a victim and there's nothing they could do, and they start doing all this evil stuff, and it's just like, oh, it's not my fault, I just this didn't work out, and that, and now I'm on drugs, and now I lost my job because they fired me because I have time blindness, and I was late every day, and all this stuff. Those are the type of people you can't help. Like, you maybe like one day they'll start to see the error in their ways. Maybe not, maybe another incarnation, but it's not really up to you to save everyone. Like, and you can't, like, you can only do so much. You can, the old saying, you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So you don't want to put all that burden on yourself, that, oh, I need to figure this out, I need to help them, I need to show them light. You do that by being true to yourself, and if they don't see it, they don't see it. That's just what it is. But I will be going over other Hermetic texts. Hopefully you got something out of this. I'm trying my best. But these texts were important to me. They really helped pull me out of a dark place I was in, and changed the whole trajectory of my life. Especially thanks to Manly P. Hall. Like I said, the first Hermetic text I saw or read was in the Secret Teaching of All Ages, and I listened to a lot of Manly P. Hall lectures. I used to push carts at a retail store and have my little headphone in, and I download all these Manly P. Hall lectures, and I would just listen to them, which is difficult because the audio quality sucked, but you can hear enough, I guess. But anyways, this is a long video. I will continue forward. I should have another one of these for the second book, the Divine Pymander or Pomander or whatever. I've heard it so many different ways. Probably next week. So I'll catch you guys on the next one.